Hello, my name is Anastasia, or as you know me in the class, Tess, and Agnostopoulos. I've practiced this 3 times. The third time I had something in my teeth, because that tracks. And the biggest thing I find is that I speak too fast, even when I'm just trying to say it from my perspective. So I'm going to actually just read out what I have written, and then give you my take on the actual method. And the method I'm doing is the audiolingual method. Let's begin. The audiolingual method's main description or definition is that it emphasizes the teaching of listening and speaking before reading and writing, so as in the former takes more precedence. It actually borrowed tenets from the direct method. To be more specific though, the audiolingual method focuses on listening and repetition. Mimicry and memorization so students can learn to repeat phrases and sentences without error was the basic and fundamental concept behind how this method worked. The biggest thing about this method is its complete focus on oral skills, avoiding mistakes, and reading and writing taking a backseat. So repeating with your words, basically. The audiolingual method actually originated from the United States during World War II, when armies had languages drilled into them so they could understand the people in the countries they were helping or occupying. There's a reason why it has a very militaristic and drill-based core to it. This is also why linguistic and psychological theory is so habit-based. It was very grounded in how people of the 1940s and 1950s perceived it. They were under the firm belief, basically, that repetition and drilling were absolutely key in learning a new language and retaining that information. Some characteristics would include pronunciation drills that, like I've said, are all about repetition. Audiovisual aids are used, as well as language tapes. Vocabulary is taught in context, and grammar doesn't take as much importance. For example, one activity could include repeating dialogue with your students or reading out passages, but unlike dissecting or even reading them, you would repeat after the teacher over and over again. I will demonstrate, but the passage could be from a book, depending on the learning level and age of the people in the classroom. Personally, I would use detective novels with decent sentence structures, although no gory details or inappropriate language for adults, and I would do that even for the older audience. And for a young adult fantasy, I would give that for children. To repeat. And again, not the whole book, obviously, but passages that are beneficial even to day-to-day life and the experiences that people may go through. The advantages to this method include the fact that sometimes repetition can have a lasting effect in someone's brain. It can be similar to getting a song stuck in your head. A lot of language courses still utilize this sometimes, at least with quick drills in or during the beginning of a class so that they can understand the phonology of the word. But the disadvantages outweighed in the end because as time went on, more people, especially psychologists and linguists, discovered that language specifically isn't learned from habit formation and overlearning. And it wasn't a bad thing to make errors too. There was also the fact that grammar and writing didn't take much importance, none at all with the latter, in reading and writing. And that could be a real detriment in language learning in professional settings where this stuff is a requirement in a school or in a job. So, I am done reading. So this is how I would personally perceive audiolingual, and I will tell you about my own actual personal experience with the method. And I wouldn't say I've had an actual experience, but when I was researching this in my head and trying to practice talking about it, I kept saying audiological. Audiological isn't a word, but audiolingual is, and it's self-explanatory if you're familiar with the English language. Audio basically means sound. Lingual means language. So you learn the language by hearing the sound of it. With audiolingual, you learn the language by hearing the sound of it over and over again, by also repeating it over and over again, and basically being expected to do that over and over again. Repetition. And I know I'm repeating myself because that's kind of the point of audiolingual method. You learn by repeating, by saying it. But there's my biggest gripe I actually would say with it is the lack of reading and writing. And maybe that's just me talking as somebody who really likes reading and writing. That can end up being terrible for you in the future. I love reading books. Wouldn't it be great to teach people about what happens in books, what happens in stories, and in the English language? One example, personally, what I would also use is I would create little plays, of day-to-day life, and just repeat what happens in the play to the student, and then have them repeat as well. And then they would also even take part and create their own little plays. But the problem is that there's no reading and writing. So when it comes to those little plays, you would show them visually what happens. I walk down the street. It would show pictures, so you wouldn't actually see it in writing. That's the basic function of audiolingual. You learn by seeing visuals of that action taking place as you repeat it over and over again, as that action happens. It can be beneficial as as time goes on, but sorry, I can understand the benefit in it back in the day, but I do think reading and writing at least should take some importance, at least a little bit in there, even if audiolingual is the one, like the method you choose to take. Otherwise, I could see why it was such a benefit, especially in the early 1940s and 1950s. And hopefully I was able to explain that well. If you have any questions for me, please let me know. But from my understanding, audiolingual, just to kind of summarize really quickly, the basic function of the audiolingual method is to learn the language by speaking it. To learn the language by hearing it from your teacher first, over and over again, and then speaking it yourself over and over again until you've memorized it through that repetition. Hopefully I described that sufficiently. I don't really know what else to say. Thank you.